don't scare easily. At least that's what I used to tell myself. I've lived alone for years, and I like it that way. A quiet life in a modest house at the edge of a wooded neighborhood. Secluded but not isolated. The kind of place where you nod at your neighbors but don't really know them. That changed about a month ago. It started with a noise. A soft crunching sound outside my bedroom window, like someone stepping on dry leaves. It was late, probably around 2 a.m. First, I brushed it off. A deer, maybe a raccoon. But then it happened again, and again. Every few nights, I'd wake up to faint footsteps outside my window, always stopping the moment I was fully awake. I'd get up, check outside, even shine a flashlight, but I never saw anything. No footprints, no movement, nothing. I convinced myself it was my imagination. That was until I saw the door handle move. It was 2 weeks ago. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard it. The metallic rattle of my back door handle turning, slow and deliberate. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed and crept toward the door, every muscle in my body tense. By the time I yanked it open, the yard was empty. No sign of anyone. That was it for me. The next day, I installed security cameras. One in the front yard, one in the back, and one overlooking the side of the house near my bedroom window. I set them to record only when they detected motion. It made me feel safer, but that feeling wouldn't last. Because last night I finally checked the footage, and now I wish I hadn't. I didn't check the security footage right away. At first, I just let the cameras do their job, hoping they'd prove what I already suspected. Some animal was creeping around my yard at night. Maybe a coyote, maybe a neighbor's dog. But last night, something felt off. I woke up again at 2:14 a.m., the same time as before. My skin prickled, like my body sensed something before my mind could. The house was silent, but there was that feeling. You know the one. That creeping sensation that you're being watched. I lay still, straining my ears. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator in the next room. But I couldn't shake the unease, so I did something I hadn't done before. I grabbed my phone and checked the camera feed. The back camera had recorded movement at 2:07 a.m., just a few minutes before I woke up. I hit play. At first, all I saw was my empty backyard, bathed in the pale glow of the porch light. The trees swayed lightly in the breeze. Nothing out of the ordinary, but then movement in the lower right corner. A figure, standing at the edge of the frame. It wasn't moving, just standing there, partially hidden by the shadows of the trees. I squinted, trying to make out details, but the resolution wasn't great. Tall, thin, too still. Then the clip ended. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. I checked the live feed, but the backyard was empty now. Still, I felt exposed, like whoever had been there could still be watching. My hands were shaky as I scrolled back through the footage, checking for other motion triggers. 2:08 a.m. Another clip. I pressed play, and my breath caught in my throat. The figure was closer, no longer at the edge of the frame. Now it stood in the middle of my yard, facing the house, facing the camera. But its head was tilted slightly, as if listening. My stomach churned. Who the hell was this? A prowler? Some creep casing my house? The clip ended again. No movement detected after that. I should have called the cops right then and there. But something about the footage unsettled me so much that I hesitated. It wasn't just that someone was in my yard. It was the way they stood, the unnatural stillness, the lack of hesitation like they belonged there. And worst of all, the timestamps. The footage ended at 2:08 a.m. I woke up at 2:14 a.m. That meant they were there, watching me, while I was asleep, and I never heard them leave. I barely slept after that. I kept my phone in my hand, refreshing the live feed over and over, but the cameras didn't pick up anything else. Still, I felt like I wasn't alone, like something was still out there. By morning, I convinced myself that maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. Maybe it was just a lost drunk, some idiot wandering through backyards. It was a flimsy excuse, but I clung to it. That night, I made sure every door and window was locked. I kept a knife on my nightstand and the baseball bat beside my bed, and I forced myself to sleep. I shouldn't have, because the next day I checked the footage again, and that's when I saw it. 2:11 a.m. A new motion alert. My stomach tightened as I opened the clip. The backyard was empty at first. Then movement, but not in the yard. In my window, a reflection. I froze. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. But there it was, clear as day. A dark shape, faintly reflected in the bedroom window from inside my house. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. My skin went ice cold. The figure wasn't outside. It had never been outside. It was inside my house, standing in my room, watching me sleep. I felt paralyzed. My mind scrambled for explanations, anything to make this less real. A trick of the light? A glitch in the camera? But deep down, I already knew the truth. Someone had been inside my house, standing in my bedroom, watching me. I stared at the footage, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The figure's outline in the reflection was hazy, but I could tell it was tall, its head slightly tilted, as if studying me. The clip lasted 15 seconds. I watched it over and over, my stomach twisting tighter each time. I had been asleep, completely unaware, and when the clip ended, the figure was still there. That meant I never saw it leave. Or worse, what if it never did? I shot up from my chair, gripping the baseball bat with both hands. My body felt numb, disconnected. I checked every door and window again, even though I knew they were locked. Then, I searched the house. Every room, every closet, under the bed, inside cabinets. Nothing. The house was empty. But I didn't feel alone. I grabbed my keys and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed out. My hands shook as I drove aimlessly, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But then my phone buzzed. A new motion alert. I almost didn't want to look, but I did. And the moment I opened the clip, my blood turned to ice. The figure was back, but not in the yard, not at the window. It was standing in my living room, facing the camera, and this time, it was smiling. I nearly dropped my phone. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. The figure stood motionless in my living room, just a few feet from the camera. The image was grainy, the low light warping the details, but one thing was unmistakable: the smile. It wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, too unnatural, stretching across its face like someone who had forgotten how to be human. And it was looking directly at the camera. I felt sick. My stomach twisted violently, my body screaming at me to run. But I was already outside, already gone. I was parked in a gas station lot, engine still running. My hands shook as I rewound the clip, watching it again. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, grinning, like it wanted me to see it. Then, at the very last second, just before the recording cut off, tilted its head, not like a person would, more like a marionette being yanked by invisible strings. A quick, unnatural jerk to one side, the smile never fading. I clamped a hand over my mouth, my pulse hammering so hard I felt lightheaded. This wasn't some prowler. This wasn't some intruder. This was something else. The house was empty. So where did it go? I didn't go back home. Not that night. Not after seeing that. I drove straight to a motel on the other side of town, paid in cash, and locked myself inside. I barely slept. Every sound made my skin crawl. The hum of the mini fridge, the occasional creak of the walls. Even the muffled voices from the TV in the next room sent jolts of fear through me. I kept my phone on the nightstand, refreshing the camera feed every few minutes. But the house was still. The cameras weren't picking up anything. It didn't make sense. Where had it gone? The last footage showed it inside my house, and I had checked every room before leaving. There was nowhere for it to go, unless it was still there, somewhere the cameras couldn't see. That thought settled deep in my gut, cold and heavy. I barely breathed as I scrolled through the past few nights' recordings, searching for anything I might have missed. Then, at 2:14 a.m., the same time I had been waking up every night, I found it. A clip from 2 nights ago. one I hadn't watched before. I hit play, and the screen filled with a familiar image. My dark bedroom, my still figure curled in bed. But something was off. The closet door was open. I froze. I never leave my closet door open. And then movement. My entire body locked up as I watched something emerge from the shadows of my open closet. The figure. It had been in my room before. It had been hiding, waiting, and then, slowly, it moved toward my bed. Toward me. The clip ended. My vision blurred. My heart slamming against my ribs. Couldn't breathe. This thing, whatever it was, wasn't breaking in. It was already inside. My hands were ice cold as I gripped my phone. My mind kept looping that footage. The closet door opening, the figure stepping out, the way it moved toward me as I slept. Had it touched me? Had it stood over me for minutes? Hours? The thought made me lightheaded. I had been so focused on the backyard, on the footsteps outside, that I never even considered what if it had been inside the entire time. I wanted to scream, to burn my house to the ground, to never go back. But a horrible, gnawing thought crept in. I knew I saw it now. That thing had stood in front of the camera on purpose. It wanted me to know. And that meant it wasn't done with me yet. A desperate plan. I sat in that dingy motel room for hours, my mind spinning. Running wasn't enough. Whatever this thing was, it had been inside my house before. I had no way of knowing how long. If I left, would it follow me? Had it already? I needed answers. I needed proof. And as insane as it sounded, I needed to go back. I told myself I wouldn't stay long. Just enough time to search for anything, any clue about how it was getting in. Then I'd pack a bag, leave town, and never look back. The sun had just started setting when I pulled into my driveway. My house looked normal, like nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. I gripped the baseball bat in one hand and the phone in the other, camera app open, ready to record. My heart was slamming against my ribs as I stepped inside. The house was silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that made your ears ring. I forced myself to move, checked the locks, the windows, all still bolted shut. Every room was exactly as I had left it. No signs of forced entry. So how was it getting in? Then I noticed the crawl space. It was in the hallway, near my bedroom. A square ceiling panel, one I had never touched in the years I'd lived here. I barely even thought about it. But now I couldn't look away. The edges of the panel were wrong, slightly misaligned, like it had been moved recently. A horrible thought wedged itself into my brain. Had it been hiding up there? I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. I knew I had to check. But every part of me screamed not to. Hands shaking, I grabbed a chair from the kitchen, positioned it under the panel, and stepped up. I reached out, hesitated, then pushed. The panel slid away. A wave of stale air hit me. It smelled like dust, like sweat, like something had been living up there. I lifted my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it into the dark. First, I saw nothing. Just wooden beams, tangled insulation. Then my light landed on something that shouldn't have been there. A blanket. My stomach twisted. Next to it, empty food wrappers, crumpled bags, a plastic water bottle. And then, my light landed on something that made my skin crawl. A notebook. I reached up, fingers trembling, and grabbed it. The pages were filled with messy, frantic handwriting. And when I saw what was written, I felt my entire body go numb. It was my name, over and over again, scrawled in different sizes, different pressures. Some letters dug into the paper so hard they nearly tore through. Then, on the last page, written in shaky, uneven print, "I know you see me." I nearly fell off the chair. A noise echoed from somewhere in the house. A soft creak. I wasn't alone. The creak came from the bedroom. I went completely still, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. My ears strained against the suffocating silence. The air was thick, too thick, like the house itself was holding its breath. I wasn't alone. Something was in here with me. I swallowed hard, forcing my limbs to move. Slowly, so slowly, I stepped down from the chair, my eyes locked on the hallway. I tightened my grip on the baseball bat. My breathing was too loud. The silence made it unbearable. Then another creak, closer this time, from the other side of my cracked bedroom door. I backed away inch by inch. I should have run, should have bolted for the front door, but a sick, awful part of me needed to know, needed to see. I lifted my phone with one hand, bat in the other, and started recording. I reached out and nudged the door open. The room was dark, but my phone's flashlight cut through the shadows. The bed was just as I left it. The closet door was shut, and then something moved, a shape shifting in the farthest corner of the room. My light caught it and my stomach dropped. A figure, crouched in the corner, long-limbed, unnaturally thin, its head tilted at an impossible angle. And worst of all, it was smiling, that same horrible, stretched-out grin I had seen in the camera footage. It was waiting for me. It had always been here. My body finally kicked into gear. I turned and ran. I don't even remember making it to the front door. 1 second, I was in the hallway, and the next I was shoving my way outside, nearly tripping over the porch steps. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I jumped into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the keys in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and then a movement in my rearview mirror. I looked up and my blood ran cold. Through the windshield I saw it, the figure, standing in my bedroom window, watching me, still smiling. I slammed the gas and sped away, my tires screeching against the pavement. I didn't stop driving until I hit the next town over. But the story doesn't end there. I called the cops, told them everything. They checked the house, top to bottom. They found nothing. No intruder. No signs of forced entry. Not even the food wrappers or the notebook I had pulled from the attic. It was like it had all been erased, like it had never been there at all. But I know what I saw. I know what was in my house. And the worst part? That night, after I got to a new motel, locked the door, shoved a chair against it, I checked my phone. There was one last motion alert. From the camera inside my bedroom. The timestamp? 2:14 a.m. With shaking hands, I opened the footage, and my stomach dropped. The screen was almost completely black, because the camera had been covered by something. Something tall. Something standing right in front of it. Then, just before the recording cut off, the cover moved just enough to reveal a sliver of a face. Pale, smiling, and it whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I could see it. It mouthed 2 words. Not yet. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the frozen image on my phone screen. That face, pale, grinning, waiting, was burned into my brain. Not yet. I felt sick. My skin was cold, but my body was covered in sweat. What did that mean? Not yet. Not yet what? Was it telling me this wasn't over? That it was still coming for me? I shut off my phone, shoved it under the motel pillow like that would somehow erase what I'd seen. But I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unfeel the weight of something watching me. The motel room was silent. No traffic outside. No buzzing from the old mini-fridge. Nothing. The kind of silence that made my ears ring. I didn't sleep. Every so often I'd check the camera feed again just to make sure. But my house stayed empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a mistake. I should have burned that house down. The next day I made my decision. I wasn't going back. I'd pack up my life, sell the house, and never look back. I started looking up apartments in different cities, places far away from here. Somewhere new, somewhere fresh. And for a few nights, nothing happened. No alerts, no movement, no more figures standing in my house. I almost convinced myself it was over. Almost. Until the motel phone rang. I hesitated before answering. Nobody knew I was here. I hadn't given this number to anyone. I picked up, my voice hoarse. Hello? Silence. Then breathing. Shallow. Too slow. Prickle ran up my spine. I almost hung up. But then, in the faintest, softest whisper, I heard it. Not yet. I slammed the phone down so hard it nearly broke. I backed away from the nightstand, hands shaking. My pulse was roaring in my ears. This thing, whatever it wasn't tied to the house. It had followed me. It was never about the house. I grabbed my car keys, my bag, and bolted. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to move. I drove for hours. Through towns, highways, back roads. I kept expecting to see something in my rearview mirror. A figure standing on the side of the road. A pale face peeking from the trees. But I never did. I didn't stop until I reached another state. Found another motel. Checked the room a dozen times before finally collapsing onto the bed. I was exhausted. Physically, mentally. I had been running from something I couldn't even understand. I knew I should stay awake, but my body shut down. And for the first time in days, I fell asleep. Then I woke up. I don't know what pulled me from sleep. A sound? A shift in the air? I was in the motel bed, heart hammering, eyes adjusting to the dark. Something felt wrong. I reached for my phone, fumbled to check the time. 2:14 a.m. And then, a soft creak from the closet. My breath caught in my throat. My entire body locked up. The closet door was cracked open. Just an inch. I knew I had closed it. I stared at that sliver of darkness. Frozen. Every nerve in my body screaming to run, run, run. But I couldn't move. Then, the door began to open. And inside something shifted. A figure. Tall. Thin. Smiling. It had found me. And this time, it wasn't waiting anymore. The closet door swung open slowly. The air in the room changed, heavier, suffocating. My body refused to move, locked in place by sheer terror. I couldn't see it clearly yet, just the darkness behind the door. But I could feel it. Something was in there, and it was stepping out. The smiling thing. The first thing I saw was its hand. Long, bony fingers curled around the edge of the doorframe, too many joints bending the wrong way. Its nails scraped softly against the wood as it pulled itself forward. Then the face emerged. That horrible, stretched-out grin. Too wide. Lips peeling back over teeth that were too small and too many. Its skin was pale, almost gray, like it had been buried underground for years. But the worst part? Its eyes. They weren't empty. They weren't black pits like some monster in a horror movie. They were human. Too human. Like they didn't belong to it. Like they had been stolen. And they were locked onto me. Watching. Waiting. My breath hitched in my throat. Run. 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 My body finally broke free from the paralysis. I lunged for the motel door, grabbing at the lock with frantic fingers. My hands were slippery with sweat, shaking so badly I could barely turn the latch. Behind me, the soft sound of footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Like it wasn't in a hurry. Like it knew I had nowhere to go. I yanked the door open and sprinted into the night. It let me go. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station down the road. I stumbled inside, chest heaving, eyes darting to the glass doors behind me. Nothing. No pale figure. No twisted grin. No thing following me. But I knew it was still watching. Somewhere, just beyond the lights. It had let me go. Because it didn't need to chase me. It had said it before. Not yet. Nowhere is safe. I left town that night. Got in my car and drove until the sky started to lighten. I don't know where I'm going. It doesn't matter. Because deep down, I know the truth. This thing, whatever it is, it was never about the house. It was never about me seeing it. It was always about time. And sooner or later, time's going to run out. I don't remember how long I drove. Hours, maybe days. I stopped checking road signs. Stopped caring where I was headed. I just kept moving. But the feeling never left. That creeping, skin-crawling sense of being watched. Like a thread was tied around my throat, pulling tighter with every mile. Like I wasn't running away. Like I was being herded. Nowhere to hide. Motels, rest stops, gas stations. I never stayed in one place too long. I barely slept, but when I did, it always happened the same way. I'd wake up, check the time, 2:14 a.m., and then a sound, a creak, a whisper, a shuffle of movement just outside my vision. I'd look, but nothing was ever there. First. Then, 2 nights ago, I woke up to something new. A notification. Motion detected. I hadn't checked my cameras in weeks. I didn't want to see, didn't want to know, but something made me open the app. It was a recording from my bedroom camera. The house I had abandoned. The footage was only 4 seconds long. At first, it showed nothing. Just the empty room, covered in dust. Then movement. The closet door opened, and something stepped out. Not fast. Not like it was chasing something. Like it was leaving. Like it was done waiting. The clip ended. My vision tunneled. My hands went numb. 'Cause I understood finally what it had meant. Not yet. Not until it was ready. And now it's already here. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat, floored the gas pedal, and drove until my tank was nearly empty. I pulled into another nameless motel, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. This was useless, pointless, because I knew what was going to happen. I was too tired to fight it anymore. I checked in, locked the door, pushed the dresser against it, kept the baseball bat in my lap. But it wouldn't matter. I knew how this would end. The clock on the nightstand glowed softly in the dark. 2:13 a.m. I held my breath, waited, and then the closet door creaked open. I didn't run, didn't even turn to look, because I could already see the reflection. In the TV screen, a shape stepping forward, a face, smiling, and then a whisper, so close it sent ice through my veins. It's time. The screen went black, and so did everything else. The police report was brief. Motel room 6. The door still locked from the inside. A dresser blocking the entrance. No sign of forced entry. Yet the guest was gone. All that remained was a phone on the nightstand. Screen cracked. One last video never opened. Emotion alert. 2:14 a.m. The final recording showed the empty motel room. Then, the closet door opening, and something stepping forward, smiling, then static, and